How are we at trial right now when we don't have concrete evidence that Richard Allen or anyone did this crime? So let's jump in, right? We talked about Bridge Guy, we talked about Down the Hill, we talked about what they have in this case. But now let's dive into Richard Allen and how he got discovered and all of that. 2022, we get this bomb that there has been a suspect arrested, and it's Richard Allen. I am sure all of Delphi was super confused by this because the whole nation was. Richard Allen was a community member, and he did come forward very early on in the case saying that he was on the bridge that day or something of that matter. Now, his file got somehow placed in the wrong area. And so when they started relooking at this case with someone different, they came across Richard Allen's profile and started to look into him deeper as being someone who was there during the crime. There is some confusion here. So let's talk about just before when he was being talked to, he stated that he did not do it. He stated that he was there looking at fish, and that's really all that he said. On that day, there was a car parked oddly, basically backed into a parking spot close to the bridge. People say that this was his car, but there's not a lot of evidence saying there was or there wasn't. So the trial began October 18th, 2024, and we learned a lot of information, but I still have so many questions. He faces up to 130 years for this, so let's talk about it. Richard Allen's path has been very strange. Like I said he didn't do it. But then when he went into prison, things changed. He became very unwell. His defense attorney said that he was naked a lot of the time. He was eating feces. He was drinking out of the toilet. He was banging his head on the wall. He basically went through a mental breakdown in jail. Now, what was this? We don't really know. Some people say that they were basically torturing this man in jail. He ended up being in solitary confinement for most of his stay, and you're not supposed to be there for like longer than 30 days or something like that, like longer than a certain amount of point. And he was there a lot. He was in solitary confinement constantly. They believed he was a danger to himself, and it was really rough. During this time, he began confessing. He basically confessed to anyone who would hear it. He confessed to his attorneys, his family, everyone. He said, I did it. And he even told his wife on the phone, which was recorded because it's a jail conversation, he said, I did it. He said, I unalived Libby and Abby. But his defense attorneys say basically there's not a lot saying that he did this crime. Now, a lot of people believe that he is a scapegoat or he is set up. And let's talk about why they believe that, because let's talk about the evidence that does point to him being the person who did this. Now, there is no DNA in this case. Let me repeat that. There is no DNA in this case. How is that possible? I don't know, because there was a lot. I mean, these girls went through horrific things. They were not essayed, but they believed that Richard Allen's um, motive was SA and he got interrupted. Now, let's talk about the biggest thing in this case, and that is that shell casing. So, there is a shell casing from what you think it is that was found in between Libby and Abby in the crime scene. This casing, they believe, goes back to Richard Allen's thing, right? However, this isn't like, so there's there's different experts that believe different things. One expert believes this is like a DNA print, that this shell casing definitely came from Richard Allen and that he did it, and that he can't say he didn't because that came from him and it's like a fingerprint. But there are other people who say that that is not true and that it could be from someone else's or from a different weapon. That is basically the biggest thing that they have in this case. Another thing that they have is that the prosecutor believes, well, had an expert that believed that Libby's phone had like headphones plugged into it after the time of all of this. So it was like in the middle of the night, someone plugged in headphones, and that this was to like right after a call to Libby's phone, they placed the headphone into the jack. I know it's an expert testimony, but I'm not quite sure that that is real. But it's being used in court, so I don't know. And when I say those are the only two things, those are really the only two things. Everything else is really circumstantial. We don't know really if Richard Allen was there or not there because he said so many things. He said he didn't do it, then he said he did. He is a very unstable person. So everything that he has said, I think, has to be thrown out the window. So we have to look at the evidence, and there is really not a lot of evidence. Like I said, there is no DNA connecting him to the crime. And the scene was weird. So I have not seen crime scene pictures. I don't want to. I no. But from the description of what they shown in court, it is very interesting, this crime scene. They were placed kind of side by side, with a little area in between them with that cartridge in between. They had branches over them. And the scene was just very weird. To people who have seen them, they say that it is strange, almost like a cult like type of thing. I don't know if this is going to hold any water, this theory, but people believe that it goes back to a cult like thing that I'm not going to go a whole lot into because it's very racial and I don't want to give that any airtime. But it's this cult that will sacrifice people, basically. And so they think that that's who did this instead of Richard Allen. I think one thing is for certain that the police kind of dropped the ball on this. They weren't prepared for this. This is a very small town, and they were not prepared for the kind of scene that they had to investigate. They were not prepared for the kind of investigation that they did. And they did drop the ball on a lot of things. They recorded a lot from Richard Allen, and some of it was not recorded. And they said they had technical difficulties, some of which did not have the Miranda rights. So that's a big thing in court right now. The fact that they cleared him back in 2017 and then reopened it in 2022, and now he's the main suspect, is causing a lot of issues for people. They do believe that a box cutter was used and Richard Allen had box cutters, but that's circumstantial. The girls, neither of them had defensive wounds, and it does they do believe that they were dragged to where they were placed. What gets me is there was no communication between Richard Allen and Libby and Abby that they know of, and it's just all a opportunistic thing. To me, that is the weirdest part. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I believe that someone knew the girls were going to be there, because how do you just commit this heinous thing and think you're just going to get away with it in broad daylight? How did he have a box cutter on him? How did all of this happen? I'm just very confused. I don't know if Richard Allen is our guy. I don't know if we know. I doubt that it's a cult, but a lot of people believe that too. I am at a loss for words. Please help me on this case and tell me what you think. I feel like I was just rambling. I'm sorry, but this case is crazy.